Generally, I mean, anything in particular you wanted to discuss, or?
Well, I could talk about a few debates if you wanted, but I also mainly just wanted to call because there is probably my biggest objection to Islam, and I've called on to a few Dawa shows, and I don't know that the answers I heard were super great, and I wanted to hear if potentially y'all had a good answer, right? I want to keep
Well,
speaking.
Aladdin. I mean, if we got Aladdin on the stage, then we've got some knowledge here.
No,
So, brother,
I don't have some knowledge, please.
no. Come on, listen.
No.
We've got a Christian here who's got a question.
No. Connor said that he got the answers from other brothers, so he got the answer already. So if you
but we don't know who he got the answer from, though.
So can I ask you, Connor? May I know who answered your questions, please? If you don't mind me asking you, Connor. Who did you hear the answer?
Who answered? What their answer was?
The questions that you have, your rejection about Islam. You said that you've heard answers from others. So may I know who did you hear the answers from? If you don't mind me asking you.
Well, let's see. I talked to Dawa over Dunya. I called onto his show.
Okay.
But that's been a while. I also called onto EA Dawa back in the day.
Okay.
And that's all I can think of off the top of my head for who I've heard answers from.
So may I know what was the questions that you asked and give me the answer as well that you heard from them? You give me an example, please, if you don't mind.
So, so the argument is the resurrection of Jesus, like the historical evidence for the resurrection happening. And I spoke to a few of them, not just Rumsey and EA Dawa himself, but also like the other people that were on the panel when I've called on different times. And the answers that I've heard are one of two. One answer that I hear is a lot of times they'll sort of attempt to like change the topic and just try and disprove Christianity by some unrelated means. They'll be like, look at this Bible contradiction, look at this whatever, which isn't really relevant to the question. And then the second answer that I've heard is they'll say, well, you can't really trust the New Testament documents. We don't know who wrote them, so on and so forth, which...
No, in regard of the crucifixion, what was their answer to you? You see, you asked them about crucifixion. So what was the answer that they gave you?
The answer to the crucifixion is, 1, we would expect historical evidence if the substitution theory happened. 2, we don't have reliable documents for it. 3, unrelated topic of other Christian doctrines don't make sense.
A brother friendly Muslim is still with us. I want to make sure that you're okay. Mr. Connor, is it okay if I go on, brother friendly Muslim?
Yeah, of course you can.
Jazakallah khair. Mr. Connor, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Connor?
Yeah.
Do you know actually historically, and I'll give you the Christian sources and Christian books, early Christians around 40 to 50 years after Jesus Christ, they deny the crucifixion and they said that someone else replaced Jesus on the cross. Do you know that?
Somebody else looked like Jesus was put on the cross?
Christian says, yes, Christian sources says that someone replaced Jesus Christ, took the likeness of Jesus by God, and Jesus was standing, laughing at the Jew, then he was raised up alive. Did you know that? It's Christian historical sources, not Islamic.
That's early true. Christian. But we don't see any writings that say that until like the late 2nd century, as far as I'm aware. And I am not aware of any historian that places a decent amount of reliability on those documents.
Have you heard of the book? The name of the title of the book is The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. Have you ever heard of that book?
The Holy Blood and the Holy Brain?
Grail. The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail.
No, I've not heard.
And this book has 3 different versions with 3 different authors. If you want me to give you the source, I'll give you the link now in the private chat. You can open, and I'll give you even the page number where you will read from those Christian theologians saying by their own mouth and giving historical evidence that someone else replaced Jesus on the cross. Therefore, likeness of Jesus took his place, and they give even their evidence based on the Bible. And I'll give you the verses that they quote from the Bible to prove that someone else replaced Jesus on the cross. They're Christian like yourself, who they believe in the Bible like you do. They believe in the deity of Jesus Christ. They believe that he is God like you do. But they don't believe that it suit or fit God to be tortured and killed in such barbaric way by his creation on the cross. So therefore, someone else replaced him. And the verses that they quote to support their claim, please pay attention with me. Write it down. Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 14. You read, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So they have to do to the Son of Man exactly what Moses did to the serpent in the wilderness. Let's go and ask Moses, what did he do to the serpent? If you go and read the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verse 8 and 9. And the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon the bowl. So God ordered Moses to make a fiery serpent. Verse 9, and Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon the bowl. So Moses did not put a real serpent on the bowl. He put a likeness of the serpent, which was made of brass. Now, if you go back to John chapter 3, verse 14, it says, as Moses lifted the serpent, same thing should happen to the Son of Man. Moses lifted up likeness of the serpent. So therefore, the one who should be crucified, likeness of Jesus. That's the evidence that they used, those early Christians, to prove that Jesus was not crucified and someone looked like Jesus, likeness of Jesus, replaced him. And they said the one who replaced Jesus is Simon of Cyrene. They called him Simon. Did you hear about that before?
As in Simon of Cyrene being crucified in Jesus' place?
Yes, that's what they say, not me. That's what the Christian says. Early Christian, that's what they said by using those verses that I gave you. And I will post you the link, the Christian source, now in a private chat. You can open it, read the book. I'll give you even the page number, and you can read it for yourself. And this book's been written by Christian theologians, not Muslims or Jewish or atheists, Christians themselves, saying this about those early Christians, such as the Basidalian. There are several groups, and one of the most popular among them were the Basidalian. You open, you have the link now in the private chat. Have you seen it?
I do.
Okay. If you open and go to page 340, you will find what I told you.
I'm not going to be able to open it because I'm on my phone. It'll kick me out of the StreamYard if I open it.
Anyway,
I'm following.
That's an evidence for you. You can look it up by yourself when you have time. Don't worry, there is no virus. If you are worried about virus, I'll give you the title of the book. Look it up on Google. Then you find it, and you can read this for yourself. I'll put you also the name of the book in private chat. That's the title of the book, private chat. The title of the book is The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. This is the title of the book. You can open the book. If any one of the brothers can open the book.
Yeah, no, I'm showing it, bro.
Yes, that's the book. Exactly. There are three different versions. For the book, and those versions were written. Let me read you the name of those writers. One of them name is Michel Vigent. The other one is Henry Lincoln. The third one is Richard Lee. Three different versions for the book, and this is one of them. I cannot remember who is the author among those three. When you go to page 340, you will find this written there. And they are all Christian theologians. They are not Muslim. You see? So Muslims were not the first to come and say that likeness of Jesus was on the cross. So even early Christians are saying the same thing. So what do you think of that?
So
what do you
there's a
think?
few things
What do
to
you
say.
think?
There's a few things to say here. Are you appealing to this as though it contains a good interpretation of the Bible, or are you appealing to it as though it on its own has historical merit?
There are Christians who give such interpretation, not me, and I give you the source. I'm quoting from Christian. I'm not giving my own interpretation. I don't do
No,
that.
I'm aware, but are you quoting them as, are you saying, look here for a valid interpretation of the Bible, or are you saying this is in itself?
No. I'm giving it to you because you said that you disagree with what the Holy Quran says about the crucifixion. Because there's a lot of historical evidence that Jesus was crucified. So I wanted to answer you back using your own sources, Christian sources, supporting what Muslims say and say the same thing about the crucifixion so many years, more than 2,000 years before Islam. Or let's say more than, 600 years or 700 before Islam. They said this. It's a Christian sources. I have no issue with that. Now I'm asking you, I present you the evidence from your sources, the Christian sources, saying that likeness of Jesus was on the cross. So what can you say about it? What do you say about this?
To clarify, your argument from the Bible is John 3 compares Jesus to the serpents that Moses lifted up. And so Jesus must have also been lifted up.
Excuse me, in Moses, did Moses lift up a real serpent or a likeness of a serpent?
I'm sorry, hold on. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, I'm sorry, forgive me, because English is my third language. If you find it very
No, you're good. I
do apologize. Thank you very much. I was asking you, according to the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verse 8 and 9, did Moses lift up a real serpent or a likeness of a serpent made of brass?
Well, the likeness of a serpent.
So very good. So what he did, he lifted up a likeness that he made up out of a brass. Now, John said, whatever happened, whatever Moses did to the serpent should happen to the Son of Man. So what Moses did, he lifted up a likeness. So John said the same thing should happen. So the one who should be crucified is a likeness, because if you said that Jesus was crucified, that contradicts the Numbers 21, 8 and 9, because Moses did not lift up a real serpent, but a likeness of a serpent. You get my point?
Yeah, I think here's where I would jump in with disagreement. I think I would have three major issues here. The first is that just because a text makes a comparison doesn't mean that they're similar in every single possible way. I think that what John 3 is attempting to say is rather that Jesus is just exalted and lofty, so on and so forth. He's raised. And he was raised in Christian theology. And then I think my second point that I would sort of maybe take some disagreement is that, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any early Christian sources that interpreted the Bible this way until, I think, late 2nd century, and we have numerous in the 1st and early 2nd century that interpreted as Jesus is really crucified. And then a third issue that I think I would take is that if you look through theologians and whatnot, you're going to find all sorts of stuff, sure. You're going to find basically any view you want to find. But if you look at actual critical biblical scholars who are professors at accredited universities, as far as I'm aware, there is not one who believes that Jesus wasn't crucified, with the exception of people who don't think Jesus existed.
Yeah, that's not really an argument, Connor, though, is it?
I'll give you another reason, Mr. Connor. Anyway, you have the evidence with you. When you have time, you can save the book. You can look it up and read it for yourself. I'll give you another biblical reason that some of those Christians used as well. If you read in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7, Jesus prayed to the Lord, who is in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplication with a strong cry and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared. So Jesus Christ was praying for the Lord, crying to save him. That's what Hebrew 5:7 says. It's not me. I'm quoting the Bible. Now, if you go to the Bible, John chapter 9, verse 31, it say that God, now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be worshipper of God and doth his will, him he heareth. So here tells you that God does not accept the prayers of the sinners. He accepts the prayers of those worshippers who worship God. You agree with me? That's what the
Yeah.
verse says. Very good. So if you go back to Hebrew 5:7, Jesus was crying and praying to the Lord to save him. So if the Lord did not save Jesus, so according to John 9:31, Jesus is a sinner. Because the Bible says in John 9:31, God does not listen to the prayers of the sinners. And in Hebrew 5:7, Jesus was praying. So if you say that God did not listen to the prayers of Jesus, that makes him a sinner. If God listened to his prayers, he's not sinner. What do you think of that?
Well, I think so. I think there's a few issues. I think one, whenever we say that this person's prayers are answered and this is not, we're talking about general rules. The Gospels are super specific that Jesus prayed to be that he would not be crucified, but at the same time, Jesus said, "At the end of the day, if it's not my will, God's will be done." So Jesus himself is opening up the possibility that his prayer might be rejected. A righteous person's prayer can be rejected according to this. So, I mean, by that logic, it would be Jesus himself would be saying, okay, I might be a sinful man, which is obviously not true. And then I think a second issue is if you read the book of Hebrews, it's like super, super clear that Jesus was crucified. That's like the whole point of the book. So I find it very unlikely that the author of Hebrews, whoever that may be, would have written the whole book about how Jesus was crucified and then just slipped in one random detail in chapter 5 that says he wasn't crucified. That doesn't really make sense.
Okay, Mr. Connor, I have a question for you. Do you believe that Jesus and the Father, when he was on the cross, they have one will or two wills?
That I don't think is really relevant. I'm more looking at
No,
the
it is
historical evidence
relevant.
for
Please answer the question. I'll tell you why it's relevant. Do you think that Jesus and the Father, when he was on the cross, they have one will or two wills?
I'm not super well versed on the
Okay,
early Trinitarian
I'll quote you the verses. I'll quote you the verses. I'll read them for you. Then you answer my question after I read the verses. Okay? You can answer me if they have one will or two wills. If you read in Matthew chapter 26, verse 39, it says about Jesus, he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Again, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 26, verse 42, he went again the second time and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me except I drink it, thy will be done." Again, Jesus said in Luke chapter 22, verse 42, saying, "Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but then be done, or your will be done." Those are enough for you. Now, according to those verses, do we have one will or two will?
Seems like two.
Very good. So what was the will of Jesus Christ?
You don't want to be crucified, but also even greater than that, wanted to do the will of the Father. was his will.
Excuse me. No, my question was very clear. What was the will of Jesus? I was not asking about the will of the Father. What was the
Right.
will of Jesus?
Jesus' will was to do what the Father wanted, and secondarily to not
No,
be crucified if God would allow.
I'm asking about the will of Jesus.
Right.
What
Jesus'
was the
will
will
is
of
to do
Jesus?
what the Father is what he
So
said.
no. Was it Jesus' will to be crucified or not?
Well, his secondary will in the text was to not be crucified, but his primary was, if it is God's will, I will be crucified. So he has two
Excuse
different
me.
motives working here.
My question is very clear, please. I mean, just answer me directly, straightforward. I gave you, Jesus says, not my will, but your will be done. So we have two wills here. Jesus' will, not my will. But God's will is to be crucified. So the will of Jesus was not to be crucified. But if the Father wants him to be crucified, so you have no choice but to submit and accept. So we have here two different wills. The will of Jesus, he doesn't want to be crucified, which proves that he was crucified against his will. And I showed you that he prayed 2 times to the Lord to pass this cup away from him. This cup means death and crucifixion, according to Christology. And when I quote you Hebrew 5:7, Jesus was praying also to the Lord, and the Lord says that he accepts the prayers of those who are not sinners. So when Jesus prayed on the cross and said, pass this cup away from me, and it was not his will to be crucified, and God did not accept his prayers, does that make Jesus sinner? Because God says that he does not accept the prayers of the sinners. And I quote you the verse. What do you think?
Right. This does not mean that Jesus is a sinner.
Okay, does that mean that Jesus crucified with his own will or against his own will?
I'm sorry. What? Repeat that for me.
Was Jesus crucified with his own will or against his own will?
Well, in the sense that he has a motive to not be crucified, it's against his will, but in the sense that he wants to submit to God, it is also to his will.
Very good. So if Jesus doesn't want to be crucified, so what's the purpose of Jesus coming here for you to die on the cross? If you say that the mission of Jesus was to fulfill the crucifixion and die for the sin of Adam, but he doesn't want to be crucified here, doesn't that contradict the idea of the crucifixion or not? So you don't tell me that Jesus went to the cross willingly. Don't tell me that Jesus came to be crucified, because if he knew that he is coming to be crucified, his will will never be that he doesn't want to be crucified. He should submit automatically, because I came to be crucified. But those verses sounds like Jesus doesn't want to be crucified and he didn't come to be crucified. And everything happened against his own will. You agree with me or not?
Hold on. This is evidence that Jesus knew he was supposed to be crucified. Because if he's saying, I don't want to be crucified, but at the same time, I know I still may be crucified because it's the will of God, this demonstrates that Jesus knows it's the will of God that he's going to be crucified.
So what is the meaning of let this cup pass away from me or pass this cup away from me?
Jesus didn't want to be crucified, but he also
No.
wanted
Let this cup pass away from me or pass this cup away from me. What is the meaning of this cup?
The cup is his death.
Two.
He
There
doesn't
is two
die.
meaning according to Christian Christology, two. Death and crucifixion. So when Jesus says, pass this cup away from me, let this cup pass away from me. So does that sound like he wanted to be crucified? He came to be crucified, or he doesn't want to be crucified?
No, he doesn't want to be crucified. This is true.
That's it. That's the end of the story. So Jesus was crucified against his will. So if Jesus came to be crucified willingly, he would never say, pass this cup away from me, let it be your will but my will. So here sounds like an argument, or let's say friendly argument or discussion between the Father and the Son. The Father wants him to do this, but he doesn't want to do that. But I have no other choice to submit to you, because I don't have the power, you have the power. So therefore I have to submit to you. But I don't have the choice, you have the choice. So Jesus doesn't have his own choice here. He doesn't have his own free will here. Sounds like he was forced to submit to the Father and to be crucified.